and just let me know if you have any questions. If you know something I don't about coffee, feel free to chime in and let us know. Feel free to take pictures and things like that. But this is our cloud forest estate for Mountain Thunder. We do have a few different farms that we grow at. This is our organic estate. So still the largest organic coffee farm in Kona. So we do pretty good. It's about 35 acres of land and about 10,000 coffee trees. So on the free tour, we don't hike down there every hour just because it is a little bit of a hike. You got to go down the hill and about 5 or 10 minutes to the left, and we have our plantation on the other hill, so you can't quite see it from here. But we'll start here because there's a couple coffee trees to look at. Not the healthiest of examples, but you can see these are younger. These are about 5 or 7 years old, so they're shorter. This one's got a good example of coffee on it though, and this one is they're about 10 or 11 years old. So it is a tree, and it can get very tall, something about 50 feet tall, but we have to keep them this height because one of the rules to Kona coffee is everything has to be hand-picked as it ripens. And so you can notice, whether you look at that tree or this one, they're really flexible, but you'll see all these green coffee beans on here. All of this stuff is totally underripe, and we don't want to pick any of that because it's not ready. If we were to mechanically pick this, we could waste a lot of potential coffee that we could use. So we want to only hand pick the bright red color. So when it reaches this red color, we call that cherry, just because of the color coffee cherry, and that's when you're able to pick it when it's ready. So Kona coffee being so rare and valuable, it's only about 1% of the worldwide market, which is why we want to can't waste it. So the Kona coffee belt is actually a very specific region of land. If you haven't visited any of the other coffee farms, there's almost 800 coffee farms in the Kona coffee belt, but it's only about 30 miles long and about 3 miles from top to bottom. So it's got to be grown within that region to be called Kona coffee. Mostly due to the type of trees. They've morphed over the past 200 years to the Arabica Kona typical, so they only grow in that region. Also the soil is very rich. Why they thrive in that soil, it's obviously volcanic in nature, which makes it very rich, and also it's very alkaline. So one of my favorite aspects of Kona coffee is it's very low in acidity. So a lot of people appreciate that. For people who, oh, I stopped drinking coffee because of the heartburn. Well, Kona coffee is much easier to digest, and also affects the flavor that way. Another unique aspect to this coffee is there's virtually no aftertaste. So if you didn't get a chance to try the coffee, or you did, you might not notice it, but it doesn't tend to linger in your mouth for very long. So once you're done drinking it, just kind of goes away. You don't have to have the coffee in your mouth burn out. It's kind of interesting little aspect of these trees. So very own variety, but it is a fruit in its beginning stage. So it does start out, actually, I was noticing some little buds starting to pop in here. See these little white flowers? You can start to see they're coming along here. In the springtime, we have a lot of these. Now, technically, it produces year-round, but we do have a harvest season, September to January or February. All these flowers tend to bloom at once, and they're bright white, so we call that Kona snow. So those are Kona snow flowers, really fragrant. And they get pollinated by the bees, and then the fruit will develop over the next 4 to 5 months as it gets pollinated. So kind of interesting that way. But again, they're really flexible, so it's really labor intensive. We have to send guys down multiple times throughout the harvest season to get the red ones as they occur, which makes it kind of valuable that way. So let's see, what else can I tell you before we move on? If you're not a coffee drinker, somebody was asking about the teas earlier. One of them is the mamaki, which is actually this tree right here, and it's indigenous to the islands. It grows all over the property. The mamaki is mostly known for its ability to help with allergy effects. So a lot of people around here, the fog from the volcano will affect them, their eyes, their breathing, their nose, just the natural allergy from that. So that's part of the reason why it's so popular. So you can sample that one if you want to. The other tea that you'll find over there is the ko'oko'olau. It's from the sunflower family, and it is actually mostly known for digestion and liver detoxing, believe it or not. So they call that the hangover cure, ko'oko'olau. So that's a good one. I'll talk about the third one in just a second. So
they are all native trees from here? Or?
Yes. Yeah. So let's see. One thing I should mention before we move on, we do have, if you see these little bugs flying around, they're probably the little beetle borer bugs. So there is a pest that we fight with. It came here about 10 years ago. It originated in Africa, but somehow it made it to the islands, and probably accidentally. It's a tiny little beetle that will eat through the cherry and then hollow out the coffee bean on the inside, but they're very small. So being organic, we can't just throw a bunch of chemical pesticides and fertilizers on the trees, so we can combat it naturally with natural deterrents, organic deterrents, believe it or not, garlic spray and some other things. Lots of methods, but in the meantime, we lose quite a bit of crop to that bug.
So there is no predator on the island.
Correct. Yeah. So Department of Agriculture donated about $2 million to the university to research and see what can be done. But in the meantime, it's just this awful pest. So unfortunately, there's less than about a dozen organic coffee farms left because of that.
Can you see the bug ourselves?
Yeah. Yeah, you can, and I'll show you. I probably have an example. And actually, if you want to check out the bowl over here, I'll kind of explain the steps because it's like Coffee 101. I'm going to go through this. Did anyone look up the elevation before they made it up the drive?
Yeah.
No? So this farm is 3,200 feet in elevation. And so most Kona coffee grows about 800 to 2,000. We're kind of a big bump up from that. The theory behind the high elevation, which it's not really just a theory, but all of these clouds that we get up here, again, cloud forest estate, gives a lot of protection and shade for the trees, which happy coffee trees require a lot of shade, believe it or not. So what you get is the fruit stays on the tree a lot longer period of time, and so then you end up with like almost a purple maroon color, lots of sugar that gets infused into the coffee bean, which equals more oil, and just really nice smooth buttery flavors is kind of why we chose the higher elevation on that. Otherwise you have to pick them when they're kind of like this lipstick cherry red color, a little bit brighter, kind of a big difference. So if you were to pick the coffee right from the tree, actually there's a little bug. Let's see if I can get him on my finger. See him?
You found the bug, Makiko.
See the little black thing?
Do you know,
Is he still alive? He's just plain dead, but yeah. See how small? So
Oh, they are tiny.
I'll try to show you some beetle board damage here in a minute, but that's how small they are. So if you were to pick up one of these coffee cherries, and I'll pull it up, just give it a little squeeze like this, and typically you have 2 coffee beans underneath, covered in this slimy, sugary mucilage coating at this point. So it's actually the seed of fruit, beginning stage. So this one's kind of unique. Typically they are the same size, flat side and a round side, just like that. So technically you could pop this in your mouth and suck out the sugary mucilage for a sweet treat, but again with that bug, I like to warn you because some people will just go for it. They'll taste one, like, unless you want bugs in your tasting, you want to check out and look for that little guy. So no bug in this one. The skin is actually really valuable. This is really high in antioxidants. People familiar with acai berry? They charge you like $14 for a scoop in your smoothie or something. So this is twice the amount of antioxidants as the acai berry. So we keep them, we dehydrate them for our cherry skin tea, which is the third tea over there. We can concentrate it for lotions and creams, all kinds of really good stuff. So right off the tree, it tastes like a sweet bell pepper in my opinion. So feel free to taste one, but again, look for that little bug.
Ooh.
So that's yeah, exactly. So that's pretty average. That's a little bit closer to see how they're the same size, and they just face each other on the flat side inside of the fruit like that. So that's typically what you get. Sometimes, and I found one of these earlier, so I'm going to show you.
And they are all Arabica type?
Yes, good question. Arabica is the type that grows in Hawaii. In Kona, we have the Arabica Kona typica trees, so even more selective to the tree that grows. The other main kind is Robusta, if you didn't know. So sometimes you get what's called a pea berry, and I found one this morning, so I'll show you. Instead of 2 coffee beans that are the same size, one will just not get developed based on the pollination from the bees, so the other one kind of takes over. And it's like a super bean, but it's more egg shaped, so it doesn't have that flat edge to it. It's kind of like a football. So it's like a 2-in-1. But we used to toss them, we thought they were defects. Now we've tested them and we know they make a much superior cup of coffee, so we just collect them up and sell them for more. But it's only about 4 to 5% of the time. So it's kind of an anomaly. It's not like there's a pea berry bush or a pea berry tree.
So is it the one you are advertise in your store, like reserve type?
No,
Or
peaberry
it's
is
called
Peaberry, right?
peaberry. Yeah.
peaberry.
So
Okay.
we do sell just peaberry coffee, but I think because it's so popular, we just have it online.
Okay.
So you have to get it online. But yes, sometimes you can go down in town and find peaberry. If you go to the farmer's market and they try to sell you peaberry, you'll know what it looks like. Not, a little round egg kind of thing. So, some people swear by it, and they say it's definitely a better cup of coffee. So to go through the process, it takes about a week to go. If you were to go straight from harvesting from the tree to roasting it, it takes about a week. So the first thing you do, a good picker can pick about 400 pounds in a day if they're good. Sometimes more, they're really good. But they're paid by the pound and not by the hour. So there's a lot of incentive to pick as much as you can.
Oh,
So
how
whatever
many
you
people-
can do.
How many people to have here?
This farm, it's about 20 to 25 seasonal workers. So we have to go down quite often to get it. But it's also kind of on your dime. It's like, okay, today I'm going to just do 200 pounds or, however much you can. So first thing you want to do when you get these picked from the tree, you want to take them to the wet mill. Within 24 hours, they start to go bad. Wet mill is just down the road. If you accidentally went too far, you might have seen a couple more driveways. So it's just on the property next door. First thing you do, you put them in a water bath, and we check for density. So we have a few different tests for density, and the first time is in the water bath. So the heavy good ones will sink, and the lighter defective ones will float, whether they've been chewed up by the bean or they were underripe when they were picked. So we skim them away, process them separately, just assuming we won't get a lot of good coffee out of it. The rest of them go through a pulping machine. There's a big kind of washer scrub that separates the bean from the skin for us. And then we have to take the slimy beans and soak them in a water bath of about 200 degrees for about 18 hours. So just below boiling, slightly ferments the bean and breaks down sugar coating. Definitely annoys the bugs at that point too. So once we're done, we rinse them off, and then we have to put them in greenhouses for, this is the longest stage, 3 to 5 days, sometimes longer depending on the sun, where we want to protect them from the rain and dry them up to about 11-12% moisture. So we have to get, this is called parchment stage. So now each coffee bean, see there's a peaberry there, will have this thick parchment layer on the outside. You can pass it in if you want to. Not too exciting. Looks like a bunch of peanuts.
That's what I thought it was, to be honest
Yeah,
with
you
you. I
thought
got
they're
two of them in my
peanuts.
pocket, I put them in my mouth,
Yeah.
and they were peanuts. I'm like, oh, that's not
No
a peanut.
ma'am. So you can see it's a little tough to break off with your hands, depending on what you're working with. So each coffee bean has this parchment layer now that we don't need. You have to remove it.
coating from the beginning or something else?
No, actually, good question. The sugar coating should be fermented and broken down, so that's not what it is. This is a different
No.
layer that dries up. So
I tried it.
I'll
I thought it was a
show you
peanut.
what that looks like when it does ferment.
Okay.
So underneath all that is a green bean, and that's what we actually cook. So this is an interesting stage. I don't think this one was fully dried. My guess is that somebody pulled these, for example, for tour before they were fully dried up, because this is real soft to the touch. These look a little bit more like what we would roast. They're not the prettiest of examples, but you kind of get the idea. So they're just a bunch of seeds. There's no flavor, there's no smell yet, anything like that. Soft. Really, really rock hard too. Not something you'd want to chew on. So, makes sense so far? Very good. I think. Try to find some.
That's half of it peeled off and half is not.
Try to show you guys here.
Okay, gotta take it off.
I was going to show to Shauna for
Yeah.
the photograph. For it.
Yeah, I'm getting the video.
Half is torn and
Yes.
other half is
Very cool.
Sometimes they do this tiny little bit of damage and it's fine, and sometimes they just totally destroy the beans. So I'll find more examples as we go along. But
But do you know this pest was attacking also coffee beans elsewhere
yes.
in Africa?
Yeah. Yeah, it was when you fill out your agricultural paperwork
Yeah.
when you fly in, perhaps somebody brought in a tree or maybe it was on someone's clothes. So they don't really like people. They just kind of are annoying, but they will go after the
Yeah.
fruit, so it was probably just
Yeah.
accidental. But yeah,
You should always be very careful.
exactly. So I hate to say right now it's on Big Island and Oahu. So I hate to say inevitably it'll probably end up on the others as well, because we grow coffee on all the islands. So right now they're really not selling a lot of green coffee just because they're trying to keep it spreading big quarantine princess.
So when did it come?
10 years ago. Yeah. So this farm is 20 years
Kylie, can you get it for Grandpa? It's right there on the floor.
old. All right. Well, if that makes sense so far, you want to walk through the dry mill with me? Yeah. We'll show you some of those machines.
How is the coffee on these other
So, the machines have stopped running for the day, but actually this is good because they're so loud and I can't tell you a lot of information. It's a lot of me screaming and hoping that you hear me. So when they're done in the greenhouse and they reach the parchment stage, that's when they come here. So we use these super bags. See these white sacks around here? That holds about 1,200 pounds of coffee at a time. And so we'll do a few of those in a day, but we don't have to do this every day, just kind of based on demand. So we bring the parchment skin, we drop it all into this grate in the ground. It gets lifted by this elevator, and then we drop it in the fuller. So this first machine, this is going to remove all that parchment skin for us. So you can see this big wheel. Feel free to kind of walk through if you can't see it, but there's a wheel in here. It's run on a big belt, and this auger, it extends back through a cylinder shape, and inside is like a corkscrew and a screen. So it's basically grating off the parchment skin. It's like a pressure cheese grater kind of, if you will. So the parchment skin will go up and out the back to a truck. We'll keep it, use it for fertilizer, mulch, anything that we can reuse, we will. And then the beans, they get separated. They'll go down and then up a second elevator, and then we put it in the catador machine. So this is our second attempt at density separation. Pretty important. So this is basically one big vacuum, and we turn it on, and when we have the air spinning around like this, all by centrifugal force, heavy stuff will get vacuumed up. In the process, though, we're going to lose all of the lighter stuff down to the bottom. So we're going to start to collect like extra parchment skin or tiny beans or broken beans or chewed up beans and things like that. So stuff that we just can't use for coffee. And so this will make excellent fertilizer. Again, mix it with seaweed, coffee grounds, manure, put it back on the trees once or twice a year. And so that's where you get organic fertilizer, manure. But that's what it is. So then we vacuum all the heavy coffee up in here, and then from here we have to actually separate by size. So let's see, for this machine, in order here. You guys seem like you slightly are interested, which is a good thing. Sometimes you get groups who are just but I'll tell you some details. This is 1/64 inch difference. Thanks to grading coffee, it's very minuscule difference on there. If you didn't know, top of the line, basically the bigger the better, right? So probably healthier fruit, more sugars and oils and things like that, potential for flavor. Top of the line is known as extra fancy. So if you see extra fancy coffee, that's pretty much the best grade you can get. And then you have fancy, and then you have number one, and then you have prime.
You don't call it number two?
No, it's a little deceptive. It's they all sound pretty good, but they didn't want to call it Kona cheap, so they called it Kona prime. Kona number one, cheap. So it's kind of interesting. And the funny thing is, coffee producers are not required to tell you what grade is in the bag. So you don't always know when you're purchasing. So you have to start getting savvy about it. Words like premium, but then again, they don't tell you. So if you're selling just extra fancy, you could put that, slap it on the label and say, buy my extra fancy coffee. If not, they don't have to tell you that it's anything less than that.
So do you have this kind of separation in your shop?
Yes, and so before I explain, the other thing we separate out is pea berry. So remember the egg-shaped one that I was showing you? We'll catch all those at the bottom of that straight edge instead of the circles in there. So on a larger scale, from top to bottom, we have these screens, and this machine just shakes back and forth, and we sift out all sizes. So to answer your question, Mountain Thunder, all of our coffee is only extra fancy, fancy, and pea berry. We take all of our number one and our prime, and we will sell it to other farmers to roast, just because it just doesn't quite give. At Mountain Thunder, our owner is very particular about getting the cream of the crop, so it's really, he sacrifices some of that stuff just to get the better flavor. So again, we only use the top grades, and then the other ones we'll sell off. Or a lot of times, low grade Kona will be sold for like 10% Kona blends. So you see a lot of those blends around, so it's still kind of low grade, 10% influence, and it's still 90% who knows what from where. It could be anywhere in the world, so it's kind of a marketing weekend. So you always want to look for 100% Kona on the label, and then you know you're getting at least good Kona coffee. So we separate out by size. Each one has their own bag and their own elevator, and then we'll do our final density separation test on the gravity table. So you've never seen it. Feel free to come around and check it out. Well, he left it on. He left some of it on. Probably for example. So this one, vibrate when you turn it on. But the main feature of this is the air pressure that comes up from underneath. So basically the lighter stuff gets influenced by the air pressure, but the heavy stuff doesn't. So when you turn this on, you see all these beans bouncing around, and the heavy stuff will defy gravity and go up, and then lighter stuff will come down. And so this is not finished, but you can see this distinction, this line. Some of this lighter stuff is going to start coming down, and heavy stuff, this is like pretty nice looking stuff. So this is probably maybe been run through a time. So now you can start to really pick out bean-borne damage with your eyes. See how they've chewed all that up? Yeah. So all this stuff is, we sell whole bean coffee. So if we're going to sell you a bean, we can't have a bunch of holes on there. It's terrible. But it also compromises the health of the fruit, and so you kind of start to get sour influence too in that way. So this is pretty much the extent of separation in a dry mill for a coffee farm. This is pretty much how far you can go. You can separate by size, density. And so there one other thing, and of course Mountain Thunder has to take it one step further. Let's see if I can get some examples here. You see a lot of color variation on here, but none of this has been roasted. So it makes you wonder what's going on with that. Well, that's quite a variation. So basically, we want a nice green color. And find a nice, this all looks pretty good actually. But you see the difference? This is almost white, kind of yellow, brown, and black, and then we have this nice green color. So basically, the darker the bean before you roast it means that it was probably overripe when it was picked, and so then you get more bitter. And then the lighter one is probably underripe, and that's when you get sour. So most coffee farms just don't worry about this because most of us associate bitter and sour with coffee. So if you're going to go to the extent of switching out color, you're sacrificing quantity, but you're getting a lot of quality over that. So that's kind of one thing. So we're the only farm in Hawaii to have invested in a color sorter. So doing this by hand would clearly take too much time. So this machine is our probably most valuable asset, I guess. So this is a color sorter, and this is a rapid scanning infrared optical laser sorter. So it's basically a computer that we pre-programmed to look for a very specific color of green, and then other defects like the chewed up beans and things. So we put all the coffee in here, comes down at a certain rate of speed, and all the beans are read by a series of lasers on the inside. So anything that does not fit the grade will get rejected with air jets very quickly. It's very efficient. So it might just like no, and yes, no, yes. So kind of like that. And these are actually, believe it or not, some defects. Lots of chewed up beans in there, but all of them have kind of a hue of brown to them. So the funny thing, well, so this is all 100% Kona coffee, and technically it's very good coffee. So somebody will buy it, thank you, and probably roast it up and grind it and sell it, and never know the difference. So that's kind of an interesting thing, you know. So we lose quite a bit. So what we do, it takes 1 or 2 guys to run this mill. We put it into this big hopper. So it's empty right now, but what he'll do is he'll fill up, it's actually divided in the middle. So he'll use one side and he'll look at it and make sure it looks good. And I'm thinking some of this has already been tested, but we can actually put it back on the gravity table or back to the color sorter, and we usually do a couple of times just to make sure we're getting the best we can. So he'll check it. When he's happy, he fills the other side, and then we'll attach a bag, and that's what we take to roast. So there's a lot of effort that goes into trying to get down to just the green juice.
And you can't be colorblind, right?
Correct. Very true. So yeah, does it make sense? Any questions come to mind? We still have the stage of roasting, so.
This machine was developed specifically for the purpose of...
Not coffee specifically, as far as I understand it, it's used in other
That's what I was wondering, yeah.
food products as well.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So, but it's a
Probably.
food color sorting.
Yes, well, and the same company that makes this machine makes things for like NASA and aeronautics. It's the Japanese Satake Stand Master, so I don't know. I'm not sure what company it is. That's 2000.
He works for NASA, that's why he's asking.
Yeah. Yeah, feel free to take a look at it.
Here it is. Here is the
Satake Stand Master.
Satake Stand.
So I think this is the old model. I don't know if that gives you any insight. So we still have roasting at this point. So if you want to check out the roaster before you go, we will check that out. We'll go back out the front. All right, I'm pretty sure. So I fit like 30 people in here the other day. I know it can be done, but we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, it's the Aloha way, right? Might have to kind of make like a little row. Morning, guys. Very good. Okay. So this is actually just 2 out of 30 roasters that we have. We have 3 of them. The one you're smelling today is a 110-pound roaster in the other room. This is a 5-pound roaster, very small, used mainly for like VIP tours when somebody wants to learn how to roast their own coffee. This is 25 pounds. So they're all basically the same concept, no matter the batch that you're doing, it's the same, it's about 14 to 16 minutes of cook time. And so they're all propane, gas-powered machines, so it's heated by a flame. There's a rotating drum in the middle that gets heated by the flame, but it's also convection oven, so we mess with airflow in order to help cooking in the aid of the bean. So what you do, we preheat them to 400 degrees. We take our green coffee, drop it in the hopper, and when we release it in, that'll automatically drop the temperature down to less than 200 usually. And then your goal is to bring that up really in harmony, not too fast, not too slow. And so basically, okay, I'm cooking 5 pounds at X amount of time, I need it to be at this temperature. So it's kind of up to you to make sure that that happens correctly. And then usually around 400 or so degrees, you get what's called first crack, and that's when the bean starts to expand. You can kind of hear it. Some people say it sounds like popcorn. Personally, I think it sounds like a fireplace crackling, but you can hear it. And then it's really important at that point to definitely babysit and make sure everything is going correctly. So you can watch the color change through the little circular window as it's cooking. It gets kind of pressed up against there. And then you can also pull it out and look at the bean visually with a scoop, officially called a trier. So you dump the bean, you scoop out more, and you look. And you want to look for mostly color. So you're timing temperature, but mostly the color of the roast. So a lot of the change happens at the very end of the cooking. So a lot, like even 30 seconds can make all the difference in a roast. So you'll hear a lot of this at the end. You know, dump it, pull out more. No, not yet. Dump it, pull out. No. And then as soon as they're happy, you definitely don't want to hesitate. You just drop the coffee, and then we redirect air to cool it off. So we got a big agitator to spin it around. So we don't want it to cook any longer is basically the reason for that. So on the VIP, if you learn on this machine, we make use this tool, we call this a spoon. Make you stir it for like 10 minutes until it's nice and cool. It's a good way to learn that way. And it looks like they have some really nice little examples here. So we keep it pretty simple here with our 3 main roasts. Lightest one we call American here. So kind of a cinnamon tan color. Right in the middle is Vienna, kind of a milk chocolate color, and then darkest is French, kind of a dark chocolate. So again, a lot of this change happens right at the very end. You can see a lot more oil the longer you roast it. You have more oil, which is usually a sign of a healthy fruit, so it's not a bad thing. And then I assume somebody here knows which one has the most caffeine.
The lightest.
The lightest one, yeah. So basically when it starts, at first crack starts to release caffeine for the first time, you're essentially burning it off for the rest of it. So the darker roast is really for flavor more than anything else. So I always thought it was the opposite. Yeah. I mean, I go to the coffee shops and give me the darkest roast you've got, man. I'm so tired. So they also have a little example of black and tan. We have a black and tan, which is the combination of the darkest and the lightest. So you have kind of a good caffeine kick, good flavor kick too. So that's kind of nice. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. It's definitely a little intimidating. Even this 25-pound roaster is something like $1,500 worth of Kona coffee if you were to burn it.
So
No
you
texting
don't have a kind of baseline you cannot say, well, after 25 minutes, I'm done.
Right.
It depends on
It's
the
still
bean.
it's still controlled by you the whole time. Exactly. It's not like just popping something in the oven. You know, you have to manage it and watch it. So especially like, let's say you're not paying attention. All of a sudden, you know, you're at 12 minutes and it's nowhere near the temperature it's supposed to be, but you can't just fire it up and cook it too fast. So it's
Yeah.
kind of a good.
So what is the proportion of each of your brand there? Do you have a kind of one
Well,
for
and you can
each?
probably correct me on this. It's mostly based on temperature and color. So American is something more like a 420, 415, 420, depending. Vienna is like 440, 445. French is closer to 460. And they want me to start roasting so I can really learn these numbers. And I'm just like, oh, I want my paycheck though. So, well,
Yeah, because
that's the main
those
thing.
who are on this machine, I paid, I believe, by the quality more than the number of beans they are processing.
Yeah, yeah, and there's different roasts. It just really it's for preference of flavor as far as the roast goes. So it's not like the lighter one is the better flavor, you know, or the dark one is the better flavor. It just kind of depends on.
No,
what
I
you
mean the
prefer.
people who are managing this machine.
Mhm.
You were talking about the pickers. They were paid by
The pound.
The pound.
Mhm.
Here, they might be paid by the quality of the beans you are.
Oh, I see what you're asking. I'm not too sure if they're paid differently based on that. I think that's more of an hourly thing, but it is kind of an apprentice trustworthy thing. I know that they've had a couple people try to learn and they just can't not burn it. But it's also kind of like, well, my version of French seems to be darker than your version of French.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's kind
Yeah.
of like, But if you travel around, there's all kinds of different levels. It's not just these three. Like you'll see blonde instead of American, or full city, which is I think between Vienna and French. So all kinds of different roasts on that. So
My son's been a coffee roaster.
yes.
Right
I
here.
keep looking at him like, did I get that right?
He's not gonna say anything. Don't worry.
So but yeah, that's pretty much the main concept, which is pretty interesting.
But
So
this takes like 25 pounds at a time.
yes, you do lose a little bit of weight by the
So
end of it.
how
so.
much how thick is the layer inside?
What's that?
How thick is the layer of coffee inside?
How thick is it?
I mean, it's
The
thick.
drum itself? I'm not sure.
Oh, the drum is rotating.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a rotating ceramic tile drum like this.
This
And
one
there's
is
one
different
frame.
than this one.
What's that?
Yeah.
The mechanic is different. This one
Yeah.
is a French machine?
They're both German. Like
German?
Diedrich models. Yes.
Okay.
So, but they're the same.
But the
same
reading
model.
is in French. Yeah.
Is that, no, I thought
Did you
Diedrich
ever
was
see that?
French. Is that? I'm sorry, I thought Diedrich was German though.
Okay, so
It's in French? Well, this is in English, so.
Just keep rotating.
Multinational.
I'm not sure actually. Well, that's interesting. Yes, touche, touche. So, the only thing I can say, we definitely want to seal it up as soon as possible. The sooner you seal it, the more freshness you can capture. But problem with that is coffee will actually degas for something like 48 hours after it's cooked. So if you bag it up, it can expand. You don't want that bag to explode. So we nitrogen flush every bag here, so we have a year-long shelf life. And then we also have that little one-way air valve. Sometimes you see the little hole on there. So as it degasses, it can leave the bag, but no new oxygen will go in the bag, so no compromising the actual coffee on the inside. So we can mosey over to the gift shop, and I have a little treat for you guys. And then if you want to pick up the coffee and kind of squeeze it and smell what's inside.
I
that's
got my
usually
coffee
worth it.
bean right here.
The only real main difference that I'll take a quick second to point out to those who are interested. The green bags are organically grown coffee. The red bags are conventionally grown. So as I said in the beginning, Mountain Thunder has a few different places that we grow at. This is our Cloud Forest Estate. So you'll see on the back the word estate, and just like wine, you know that it's sourced from one farm and one farm only. So that's what this is. And then we have our Holualoa Estate. That's one of our farms at a lower elevation down here. The rest of these are private reserve. And so some of this is from a Mountain Thunder farm, and some of it was cherry that was purchased from another farm in the Kona region. It's just processed and milled and graded all the same. But again, this is all 100% Kona coffee, and it's all the top grade. So all of them are a combination of extra fancy, and peanut. We don't sell any of them wrong. So no matter what, you're going to get the good stuff out. So it's pretty much where it's sourced, where it's grown from, is the difference. So feel free to look around. We have all our teas over here, all the body products, and I have chocolate covered tea berries.